Thank you all for joining me today, and I hope that we'll take some interesting conversations during this time and key actions to take back for you and for me both. So let's take a minute and recall that moment in your life where you felt your gender prohibited you from upcoming opportunities. And I'm going to take a pause here, let everyone think about it. I'm sure each of you had at least one event like this in your life. For many of us who are here today, let's admit that we are very lucky. Despite the barriers that came in your lives, in our lives, we did not have to go through what our mothers or our grandmothers had to go through. So I feel very blessed about that. Let me take you back to one of the stories, which was a really big milestone, a game changer in my life. It was during my high school days when I was trying to figure out what I want to become. My mom, who besides having a master's degree during those days, was a stay-at-home mom. And her entire life was dedicated to educate us. And she had a dream that I grow to become an independent woman. Doesn't matter whether I become an engineer, doctor, or work in a bank. It doesn't matter. And I did just that. I decided to pursue my career in engineering. It was harder than I had expected. My father, who had a PhD, was not in favor for me to take this path. He was not questioning my ability. He had full trust in me, full confidence in me. But in his mind, engineering was often tied with physical labor because of electrical, mechanical, civil engineering options. Those were the primary options. And more importantly, which I want to emphasize, it was male dominated. That was my first barrier. Thankfully, my mom convinced my dad to let me take the entrance exams and then worry about the next set of steps. What next? I was in the top 100 academically, so I passed that first barrier. And the next challenge began about my college. Where am I going to go? Like each of us have to go through. I'm going through with my daughter, so nothing new about it. Once again, it was not easy. And why it was not easy, the cultural norms allowed people around me to give their 2 cents about what I should be pursuing for my future. And remember, I was growing up in India. The social norms are very different. I shared this story with you because it was a game changer for me and must have been for some of you in the audience as well. Had I not had that support system from my mom, I would not be here where I am today. And I count this as a blessing every single day. So please continue to look for and build support system for you, around you, for yourself, and for others. So it's really, really important. You may not have a support system at home, but you can find support system around you and make that as your strength to take the next step in your lives. I was not as bold as I currently am. I still recall when one of our friends, family friends, were visiting us, and they casually asked like what I was doing, what I was pursuing as a career. I proudly replied, I'm doing Bachelor's of Engineering. He looked at me and he corrected me. He said, it should not be BE, which we call as Bachelor of Engineering. It must be Bachelor of Arts. And I was taken aback. That made me realize how people's mind could not associate tech degrees to women. Fast forward, I kept moving. I had a very good supporting system at my home. And by that time, my dad knew that I'm unstoppable. I went for my master's at IIT Bombay in computer science and then came to US for work. I thought the barriers were past me and I've won the battle. It's all under control. Trust me, I was mistaken. The hard part had just begun. Think about it. For an individual who is coming from a mid-tier city, not a big city, landing in US, completely different. And on top of it, working in a tech industry, there was no concept of women in tech during those days. And this is like, if you think how old the story is, this was 1998, 1999 timeframe when I came to United States. As an individual contributor, I started working as a software developer. I did not even realize what it means to be discriminated against being a woman in tech means. I was completely oblivious what's happening around me. And it continued probably. I got mentors, but I had people around me who probably had, some kind of gender bias. It became more evident when I entered into engineering management roles. And my first instance happened when I was challenged by a VP of engineering in my career, calling me in his room and stating, Indian women are not capable of being leaders, just based on his visit to India. I was shocked. This was my first management role. I was super excited, super energized to prove myself. And when I heard this thing, I was taken aback. Little did I know, I proved him wrong. As a consequence of speaking my mind, I was asked to move and take a role of an individual contributor. So think about the consequences. I was very new to the management role. I had no idea how to handle all this. I just spoke my mind just to prove myself. It was very heartbreaking. It brought tears in my eyes, and I can still never forget that first moment because first job, first management job, first degree, these are always memorable moments in your lives. For several months, I felt I had failed in my career. I started doubting my potential. And it did affect me for months until I landed in another job. Again, I wanted to share this story because luckily I had a good support system and I was open in sharing these conversations and not holding on to myself. My experience as a woman in tech has been bitter and sweet both. Bitter because I did not realize that my gender was being used against me for evaluation as opposed to my competency. So let's face it, folks. The tech industry has been a boys' club for far too long. And no offense to men in the audience, please note that this is a known fact, and we listened in the previous panel discussion as well. Unless and until we raise inclusiveness, awareness about inclusiveness, diversity, this will continue to get worse. Today, I'm speaking to you as a technology leader, and I still see this discrimination at all levels. And higher up you go, if you don't land up in a good place and a good leadership, this gets worse. So just a year back, I was providing some technical presentation and recommendations on our architecture. And one of my peer directors looked at me and said, I believe you should have some technical leads with you in the meeting. And I said, yeah, not a bad idea. It's always good to have them. And then I realized, like, suddenly it clicked to me. We had attended so many presentations with him. He never had that. At this time, trust me, I did not stay quiet. And I pulled him in the corner and asked him, are you doubting my technical abilities? I could have held back. I was just tired with this constant notion of being called out. They think that you're not that technical. And just because women, it's not just with me, with lots of women. At this point, I knew that if I would have been quiet, I was not doing the right call for the people around me, the women around me. I would be supporting this behavior for myself and for others. It has taken me a long time learning through these experiences and generally growing up to realize that how it is important to speak up for yourself. I wanted to share these stories, all of them, through my journey to let you know that challenges will come your way. They will happen around you. Life is not going to be perfect. But turn them into opportunities and come up with much more grit and competence. It will make you much stronger. Never doubt yourself, because once you fall in this trap, it leads us to do few things which are not the best way to live life. One is take a break, completely give up, and start doubting yourself, which affects personally and professionally, or change careers. And that has been one of the reasons for a lot of women in tech to leave the industry and start working somewhere else, which probably they might not enjoy. So as technology's role in society grows, so does the need to diversify the tech industry is increasing. I'm sure all of you know, in 1995, pioneering computer scientist Anita Borg challenged the tech industry to a moonshot: equal representation of women in tech by 2020, which means 50-50 in this year. We are 25 years later. We are still far from that goal. In 2018, fewer than 30% of the employees at the tech's biggest companies and 20% of the faculty in university computer science departments were women. So I want to take a pause here before we jump into some data, which I'm going to share with you, and why women in tech. If there are any questions which audience wants to bring up, I would be happy to answer for one or two questions. Otherwise, we can continue. Okay, let me just share. Okay. So let's talk about why women in tech. Women in tech, there is a gender diversity problem across the board, and it gets worse in technology. And why we are here today to discuss women in tech. Women in tech drives business growth. It helps in making sure that companies that do not have enough female employees lack different opinions, innovation, and even revenue. Companies must respect or should respect diversity. And there is a data that companies that respect diversity are 15% more likely to have financial returns above the other national industry medians. Women in tech also helps in economic growth. There's a research which says that by McKinsey that $12 trillion could be added to the global GDP by 2025 if the workplace equality makes advancements. Think about that. It's really important. I really love this one, connecting with our customers. Better customer understanding leads to better products. We all know that. And when you have a woman as one half of your consumers, so why not have women behind building those products? And bringing in diversity means opening more opportunities by designing products for everyone. Let's talk about social inclusion. Having more women in higher positions can improve the social status of women and their treatment in the society because they will be economically at par. And technology impacts everyone, it's for everybody. So gender balance in companies who are supposed to be the drivers of the future is crucial to their success. So it's really important to make sure that companies leverage this. Let me walk you through a snapshot from 2018. As you can see, how the pipeline continues to reduce. From K to 12, this is the first step when women enters or girls enter into tech. And I loved it because I have gone through this process and I can see being an engineering leader, I rarely see women in engineering management at higher level. And you are probably the only one in the room. I know it's a very common saying, but that's the reality. I mean, right now, I'm looking and I'm living through it. I'm looking to hire a senior engineering leader in my team. And it has been like 2 months I've been looking for good candidates. I have not received a single female resume, which is really strange. And it's not like the company where I work is not supporting diversity. The Workday is extremely big into diversity and they believe in it. And I can see that. But it's just there are not enough women around. Or, we'll go through it like why this is a challenge in a bit. So if you see here from K to 12, the numbers decrease. Interest in computer science, 47%, and AP computer science, 23%. Higher education for masters, 19%. Roles in computing workforce, 26%, which is fairly, it at least bumped up because now in tech, it's not just programming. There are a lot of other tech roles where, women are able to contribute. And then when you go into senior leadership, it just goes down. Let's take a look at the women workforce distribution. But before that, I want to tell you one thing, that this underrepresentation is no more a woman in tech issue. It is much beyond that. Not having diverse teams impacts business, ideation, revenues, culture, cohesiveness, and many more things if you look at. So if you look at women workforce distribution, women are working across different departments in multiple companies. And the ones which you see highlighted, this is where the big discrepancy is there. And that's where these notions, assumptions, stereotypes happen, where we feel that certain profession is just designated for men or certain profession is just designated for women. And we put people in those buckets. And that has to stop. This data also reminds me of the days when I was growing up. Because I remember in a class of 30, we were only 4 girls in computer science. And when I did masters, the same 4 number was there. So it feels like, there was no change, and it continues to be a struggle. Let's look at this data. If you look at this pipeline, this whole funnel, it's pretty interesting. At entry level, everything is 50-50. When you go to management, which is the first step, the first promotion of a staff member to manager creates a critical talent pipeline problem. And that cannot be fixed at the senior levels. The pipeline starts decreasing at this place. Women are less likely to be hired into manager roles and significantly less likely to be promoted into one. The data shows that for every 100 male managers, there are only 79 female managers. And that's the challenge. Yet at entry level, we had approximately 50-50. So what is causing this gap? This is a big question. Performance bias, unconscious bias, microaggressions, they all persist. And to some extent, racism as well. We have all seen what's happening around us. As a woman, your judgment gets questioned in your area of expertise, needing to provide more evidence to prove your competence. And I feel that technology is the greatest equalizer in the human society. And without women in tech, there is no equality. So we need to definitely focus on this, because this pipeline should not be shrinking like this. Let me walk you through some interesting facts. And these are the facts which I have gathered across multiple reports. And we feel that women make up 47% of all employed workforce, but 26% of the computing-related jobs are held by women at this time. Just 3% of computing-related jobs are held by African American women, 6% are held by Asian, and 2% are held by Hispanic women. We need to fix that as well. 50% of the women said they have experienced gender discrimination at work. Women earn 87% of what men earn. And if you're a woman of color, it's lower than 87%. This has gone better. It's not yet there. I would say a lot of companies have taken that initiative around fixing that pay gap and have taken initiatives, which is really good, because that awareness is the first step, but not everybody is there. And 71% of women have worked in a tech company with a strong bro culture. We all know that. Not going to call the name of the companies here, but we are all aware about it. Let's look at the startups. And this is more when women start going towards founder roles or being on the board. So only 1 in 4 startups have a female founder. 37% of at least one woman on the board of directors, and 53% have at least one woman in an executive position. 2.8% of all the investor funding goes to startups founded by women, while 97.2% goes to funding distributed to the men. Why? Women have great ideas too. Private technology companies, which are led by women, are more capital efficient. And they are achieving 35% higher return on investment when venture-backed, 12% higher revenues. So you can see the impact of diversity, which is really important. Women-founded companies in the first round capital portfolio outperformed companies founded by men by 63%. These are all the data which backs up and said, it's really important to have a place for women throughout the funnel. Otherwise, the companies are losing big time. Now, since we are in 2020, it has been a critical year for all of us, for our families, for our loved ones, work wise, professionally, personally, everything. Let's talk a little bit about COVID. As COVID 19 continues to affect lives and livelihoods around the world for men and women both, we can already see that the pandemic and its economic effect are having regressive impact on the gender equality. Women are more vulnerable, not because of their jobs, but also because of the gender equalities within housework division, education, healthcare, homeschooling, no daycare. So either women are forced to leave the job because they have to take care, or they are losing job because they are unable to focus on work with all these things. I mean, we are all humans at the end of the day. And it can happen with single parents as well, for men and women both. But this is the data which proves that the job loss is 1.8 times greater for women than male jobs at this point in time. COVID-19's disproportionate impact on female entrepreneurship has also been there. A lot of women who are owning micro enterprises in developing countries, they are impacted because they have a high share of female labor force participation. The crisis may have made some family resources scarce, such as financial capital to invest in the business. But it is really important to understand that this COVID has impacted this funnel big time. We were already behind. On top of this, this has impacted. So we need to do something about it. So in today's conversation, I want to make sure before we leave, we have some actions for everyone, including women. So here are some of the actions for women, because I want to make sure, and this is all I'm sharing from my experience, nothing is ever going to be served on a platter, silver platter for us. So don't be afraid to voice dissent. That's the main important thing. Get some thick skin. It's really important. I have a motto: keep your emotions at home when you come to work. Yes, it is always good to have a place where, a safe space where you want to vent out and feel good about it. You should always have that support system, but do not bring your emotions and do not get emotional about every single thing. So get some thick skin is really important. And it comes over time. If you happen to work for a company where you get that opportunity, take it. Do not ever self-doubt your abilities and take the default blame. Women tend to have that. So please do not apologize for every single thing which you are not responsible for. Be better negotiators for salaries, promos for yourself and your women peers. A lot of times, women doubt themselves and think, what will be the repercussion if I ask for more salary? You need to know what you deserve, what you are worth. So I think it's really important when you're taking a new job or when you're asking for promo, and not just for yourself, be an advocate for other women peers as well, because now you're building a community. There is a saying, and it's a data again, that men apply for a job when they are 60% ready, and women think even though when they are 100% ready. So why? So do not fall in that trap. And trust me, it comes by, I still do that, by the way. I'm not saying I'm 100% correct, but it is important to keep that at the back of your mind, that you need to be confident about yourself. Find a mentor or become a mentor. From my personal experience, this has been the greatest blessing of my life. I have an opportunity, or had an opportunity continuously, that I'm having mentors. You don't need to have just one mentor. There are always some nuggets to learn from different people around you, and become a mentor. I had been a mentor, for the last 3 years, And it has been an amazing experience when you get to learn with people like you, men or women both. And I'm not saying you just have to find a female mentor. Definitely, I would encourage to find male mentors as well. I have male mentors and female mentors both, and on the other side as well. Make yourself heard, demand the seat on the table for when it comes to decision making, asking questions when you are in a meeting. And if you want to speak, do speak. And if you are asked to, if you're cut in between, definitely bring it back and state your opinion, because it is really, really important. And if someone makes an offensive remark, have them explain to you, because I think this is really important. Sometimes women just take it and then take it to themselves and hurt themselves. So do not hurt yourself. Be nice to yourself. That's really important. And last, which I really want to call out, is don't be the doormat, because it's very easy to become a doormat. I want to make sure, before we jump onto the next slide, I want to have a key takeaway for all of us, for all the women in the audience, and even for men. Own your accomplishments and do self-promote. Because if you do not promote yourself, nobody is going to promote you. That's really important. How men can help. And I really want to thank every single man in the audience to sit through this presentation, because I feel that it's really important to have that support system from all the men as well. Here are some of the things which men can do. Be an ally. If you can be an ally for a woman, do that. Listen and amplify. Be a good listener and not make any assumptions. You may not even know that every time a woman talks, you don't give her your full attention. The data has proven. But having supportive male allies allow themselves to be educated on the issues about their female coworkers, what they face in the workplace, and importantly, they will believe. So I want to make sure that do not dismiss or get defensive if women calls on anything. I'm sure most men want to help. They just do not know sometimes how to do this. So being an ally will give you a great opportunity to know a little bit better, be more aware about these. Allow yourself to give credit. Many women are regularly denounced at work or experience some kind of battling or belittling moments, comments, and are often talked over. When you see, as a man in the room, when you are seeing this happening, please speak up, because I think it is really important. Colleagues, they are your colleagues, co-workers, and they can engage in what is popularly called as amplification, because you are going to amplify everyone in the room. Learn and model. There is an ample research showing that when men are aware of gender bias and share that awareness with others, good things happen in workplace. So when you see inequality, call out. When you see bias, call out. And do correct unconscious bias. Be a mentor and sponsor. If you can be a mentor or a sponsor for a woman, do that. And likewise, for women also, do approach in your leadership chain. Definitely go for it. Talk straight and elevate. It may sound abrupt, but here's the key thing. I want this to be taken very seriously. Research has proven that women consistently receive less feedback when it is tied to business outcome. It's very fuzzy. And it does not help women to identify what actions they need to take or how they can improve and make a positive impact on their accomplishments. And this can specifically hold women back. And I know straight talk is hard, but I want to make sure, reiterating what we discussed in the panel today, I always feel as a hiring manager, when it comes to hiring, I want to find the right talent which fits the needs. I do not look at like, oh, I need to fill in this quota. That's not the way I model. I want to bring diversity, but at the same time, I want to make sure that if a feedback has to be given to a man or a woman, it has to be direct, it has to be straight without hurting. It has to be a constructive feedback. But unless and until you give that feedback, you are not helping in the growth of that employee. So similarly, when it comes to a man giving a feedback to a woman, male manager giving a feedback to a female employee, it is really important to keep that bias aside and look from a perspective of how you can give the feedback so that the person can take some actions and grow in their career. I want to make sure that we are not missing that opportunity for women. Now, let's talk about the actions for organizations. I've listed a few of them, and I want to call it out because these are super critical. Culture. Offer workplace flexibility. Offering this to your team can help your workplace more inviting, more accommodating to working parents, commuters, part-time. All of us are part-time right now. Remote, not part-time. All of us are remote right now, but I want to make sure that companies do understand that flexibility. And hopefully, with this COVID thing and working remote, companies have overcome those barriers of FaceTime for everybody. I would say incentivize men to take parental leave, because I think that definitely will help women. If you really want to help moms out, give them the support and uninterrupted attention of being a co-parent. Organizations should allow that. Behavior. Creating that awareness around discrimination, unconscious bias, gender stereotyping, having those practices, trainings, most of the companies have it. But having that belief is really important. We all go through those trainings. But I want to make sure that if left unchecked, unconscious bias can thrive in hiring, in promotions, in feedback, and can cause discrimination. So the ripple effect is huge. And it holds women back from being equal, successful, and economically stable. Men and women get assessed differently when it comes to feedback or receiving feedback, as we talked about it earlier. And I don't think that's a good idea. Employers must educate hiring managers around hiring, promotes, irrespective of gender. All that criteria needs to be flushed out. Create those trainings, have those organizational conversations dedicated about the biases. And it again comes from the top. But I feel even in your smaller community, you can still do it. If you have a team, you want to bring that culture, please do so. There is a concept of reciprocity ring, which I love it, because reciprocity ring is a model where everybody learns from each other. And when people start seeing these behaviors, if they're positive, it can make miracles. But if they're negative, it just topples everything down. So it's really important to have a strong, positive reciprocity ring. Diversity. Create diverse candidate pools for hiring, promos, and seats at the board. Diversity leads to productivity, creativity, better revenues, employee engagement. We all know that. It's such a powerful word. But again, it has to come from the top. And you can play your part in that ladder. So let's not wait for the top always. I would say, play your role. And it has seen that, when women like to thrive in an environment where they have not only have stature, but responsibility, resources, influence, opportunity, and power, because I think everybody needs that. Sponsor. If you are a leader in an organization, do invest and sponsor women forums, create mentorship programs, be there physically present from time to time, because I think that is where you will make a big impact as an organizational leader. When it comes to hiring, I always encourage hire based on the potential, capabilities, and not the gender. So I will be completely neutral here, irrespective of men versus women, because that's super critical. Do not bring any bias when you are hiring. Data, we see so much data around it, but hold the leaders accountable for publishing the data, tracking the data, and have them measured, because these are like, I would not use the word OKR type of stuff, but it's really important to have that data tied, since the impact of improvement on the data leads to improvement in the businesses. So it's really important. And the last, which is super important, is engage, empower, and transform. Because when you engage, you are building knowledge around these communities. You are nurturing strategic partnerships around all these things what we discussed today. When you empower, you provide development opportunities. You do outreach activities. You create these mentorship, sponsorship programs. You provide positive feedback or constructive feedback. And transform. You provide a safe space for anybody to communicate, even just sharing, even ideation, and a lot of stuff happen around it. So with that, I would like to share a movie clip with you, which I really, really like. And I thought this is a perfect segue for you guys to take a look at it. Hopefully this energizes you. Let me just pause. Tech challenges. 1 second. I'll just play on a different screen. Sorry about that. Just want to confirm, can you see my screen for the movie clip?
Not yet, Monica. We're not able to see it.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just see. Not yet still?
We could a while back, Monica, when you switched on.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just see. Okay. Hopefully you can see now.
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that, guys. So let me just show you.
They say no progress. For you, for me, for us. All the numbers, all the words, the spin makes my head spin. Unattainable, unachievable, unbelievable. But I know better, because I know them, all these women. I know because I'm here too, in the trenches. We are building, creating, fighting, every damn day. Getting sued, going broke, paid less, pushed out, dismissed, unfunded. All because I have a different voice, a different idea, a new idea.
So I got sued for gender discrimination for not allowing men into my events. And it happened the day of the Women's March. I came back from marching, had my sign, and a bunch of papers were left on my doorstep. And it was just like, of course, well played, sirs, well played.
I have a male co-founder, and the way that we're perceived, especially when we've gone and fundraised, is very different. I'm called either aggressive or impulsive. He never gets called those adjectives. And I do think it's interesting that instead of saying confident or aggressive in a good way, it's seen as a bad thing.
You make a step, right? And then there's a retaliation, right? There's people who want to hold on to what they have. They feel like they're losing if a marginalized group is gaining.
There is a need for a new type of leadership, a new type of woman in the workplace. And all of us really, really need to say, this is not a rehearsal anymore. We need to act now, and we need to embrace our energy and our voice and our right to speak out.
I know I'm not alone because we are each other's stories and each other's power. What happens to you happens to me.
So the sense of community is...
So I hope you enjoyed this, because this particular clip energizes me, whenever I see it. And with that, I would leave you with one note. And let me share that note with you. It's making me emotional a little bit because I like this quite a bit. Can you see my last screen?
Yes.
And if you cannot, that's totally okay. But I want to leave you with this last note, that never apologize for being you. And part of being you, who you are, is being a woman. With that, I would like to conclude this presentation from my end, but open it up for any sort of discussion, any questions which I can answer for you.
Guys in the audience, if you have any kind of questions, please feel free to ask Monica right away.
You can post in chat if you don't want to ask.
So I guess there are, yeah.
Okay, there is a question. Any suggestions on how we can better source female candidates for startups? So the way I look at it is, when you search for candidates, in general, your requirements should be, not focused on any gender stuff. So there are a lot of software tools which the recruiters use to make sure that it's gender agnostic language. At the same time, a lot of times the way I look at it is, whenever I'm interviewing the candidates, I always feel that the candidate needs to interview on the other side as well, because they want to make sure that that's important. The organization is super critical. If I'm going for a startup, I really look at who are their founders, what are their values, because startup is fairly small, and in the leadership chain, it's very easy for that culture to penetrate very fast, unlike bigger organizations. So Make sure your culture is straight. Make sure your founders believe in it. And that can be your selling point when you are trying to recruit females. Talk about it. Because most of the times we talk about what do we need from a job description, from a candidate, but we never talk about in detail about culture. And it's really important. The beliefs, the values matter the most. And trust me, it comes over years. I mean, if I had to look for a job, the first thing I check is, what are the values of this organization? Who are the leaders and how they behave? Because at the end of the day, it all impacts everybody in the chain. So that's really important. The next question I see is, some of the things you said about having a thick skin also relates to men, but do you think there is an unfair burden on women to be that way? I would not call it as an unfair burden. You know, we are born with a different, how to put it this way, I don't have an exact word, but men and women are different. When it comes to, I'm not saying men don't have emotions or women have more emotions, but in general, you know, biologically, we are born like this. So it's really important to filter out where you should focus versus where you should not focus. And it's a learning skill, trust me. Sometimes you get bothered by small things and you should just let it go. And the more you ignore, the better it is, because you need to take care of yourself first. You should not allow people to hurt you. And if somebody is giving a feedback, yes, take that feedback as an opportunity. But if you think somebody's feedback for the sake of giving a feedback, just ignore it. And it's always a good idea to, you know, brainstorm with your male mentors if you have. Hey, you know, I thought about this thing. What do you think? So having that open discussion, having that safe space with male friends or male mentors or even female mentors who are not looking from that gender perspective is really important. It does help. Okay, I think that's all. I don't see any more questions, and hopefully it was helpful.
Monica, there are actually a lot of questions.
Okay.
Let's move to the chat
Okay.
window there, and we have a couple of
I
them.
was looking at the questions, so okay, perfect. How do we want to do that?
No, so it's actually just scroll down. I guess the latest, the last 3 questions are there.
Okay. So some of the things, I think we talked about the thick skin. What are some actions we can all take to help bring more qualified women into our organizations? I would say, in order to bring qualified women in your organizations, it's really important what kind of business problem you are trying to solve. You want to make sure that your leaders are aware about the diversity, the impact of diversity, that awareness is there. You want to make sure that they are also equal stakeholders. If you want to bring qualified women, or, you know, at any level, I would say the culture of the company is really important. How the leaders behave, what are some of the data which the companies are publishing these days around, and what actions they have taken, how much they have invested in women in tech, and in general, this gender gap speaks for itself. And this data is publicly available. So the more you do, you should publish that data. That can play in the favor, and it can attract more talent. I would say that. What to do if superiors or upper management is gender biased? Well, that's a very good question. And I'll tell you, it has costed my job as well, you know, as I shared the story. Because a lot of times it is very hard to figure out when to go to HR and when not to go to HR. It's a very balanced and very, I would not say balanced, but it's a very tricky situation. What I have done in this situation, or what I would do, is either seek for someone in the organization at a higher up who you think is an ally, and they can influence to remove this gender bias, or I know it's not the best solution, but I would rather either look for a different group to work, because at the end of the day, you have to work every day. You want to make sure that your leaders are not gender biased, or look for another role, another job where you feel that the culture is the right fit. And that's where, it's very critical to figure out the culture is the key thing when it comes to entering into a job market. Okay. Okay, last question we can take. What are some of the things you learned from your male allies about surviving in a male-dominated industry? Very important things. Get a thick skin. That's the first thing I learned. Not take everything to your heart. And when you enter into a room, you are not representing yourself as a woman. You are representing yourself as a professional, and make sure that you make them feel that, you are a peer. So you are no one who is like less than them. The more you set that expectations, they also understand this part, and that's really important.